Brentford Football Club is disrupting football with Matthew Benham's strategy that fans need to understand. Syed Benrahma, 19.3 million profit. Ollie Watkins, 24.3 million profit. Neil Maupay, 18.2 million profit. This strategy is also why they hammered Manchester United 4-0 at the start of the Premier League season. Matthew Benham's Moneyball method has turned £151 million profit in the last 6 years and lifted his childhood team from the Championship to the Premier League. If you don't know who Matthew Benham is, he's their director of football with an intriguing and unique backstory. His rags to riches tale started with humble beginnings to obtaining a physics degree from Oxford, becoming vice president at the Bank of America, and creating predictive models for gambling. He has made millions in a very short space of time. And rumour has it, the real reason that he bought Matchbook Betting Exchange was so he could get large bets on, because this guy is somebody nobody in their right mind wants to bet against. And now, as the owner of his childhood team, he's gaining notoriety within the football community too. You see, his unique approach to running Brentford is similar to what Billy Beane did with the Oakland A's in the USA, the Major League Baseball equivalent of Leicester winning the Premier League. In principle, the method is simple. Use statistical analysis and predictive modelling to compete in a competitive market by buying undervalued players and selling overvalued players to other teams. In football terms, expected goal statistics measure the probability of a scoring opportunity from a selection of variables. The data doesn't have an opinion or care about the actual goals scored. So counterintuitively, Brentford value metrics like expected goals higher than the actual result. Amongst the randomness of a football match, there are many factors that can affect whether the ball hits the back of the net or not. The quality and quantity of chances created matter more throughout the 90 minutes than the actual goals scored by a player. In theory, the higher the expected goals, the more goals potentially created and therefore scored. Put simply, if a player consistently has a higher rate of expected goals than the actual goals scored, then they are undervalued and therefore perfect for the Moneyball system. On the flip side, if they're scoring more than their true potential, it's time to sell them to a competitor at an overinflated price. Both results are a win-win for Benham and Brentford. Now, whilst the typical model for running a football club is to scout the best players and use intuition as to whether they would fit in the current manager's system due to their talent and form, Benham turns the game upside down. His approach was initially trialled with FC Mityad and carried on to Brentford upon success. Some of the more notable changes that he made to Brentford included a rehaul of the backroom staff. He fired coaches who didn't fit into the system and hired more analytical staff that were willing to focus on key performance indicators that determine progress through value, and most controversially, completely eliminating their academy setup and replacing it with a B team of younger players of 17 to 20 years old. Now, I want to elaborate on that third point for a second. The real reason that Brentford can get away with doing something drastic like this is intriguing. To evaluate a player's performance in the statistical environment, they need a minimum of 35 games worth of data. And whilst bigger clubs wouldn't even dream of scrapping their academy because of the millions they've invested in them, Brentford had the patience to experiment with a calculated risk, and they saved themselves a pretty penny by not having to run an academy in the process. Fans couldn't have dreamed that this moneyballing at Brentford would have gone the way it has. As mentioned, the last 6 years has turned 151 million profit, even through a 2-year period of pandemic. To put that into perspective how devastating the financial effect of the pandemic was to the footballing industry, UK clubs lost 99% of their ticket sales revenue. For example, in 2018, Arsenal made 70.5 million through ticket sales alone, and in 2020, they made just 650,000. Of course, Brentford were not immune to the financial havoc caused by ticket sales, but they turned their biggest profit ever in 2021, a little over £15 million. A lot of their profit can be attributed to their buying low, selling high tactic. The system relies on buying undervalued players that fit their criteria and selling them on at a higher price. Here's a quick rundown of some of the players they've turned a profit on. Andre Gray, bought for 0.6 million, sold for 11.2 million. Konza bought for 2.6 million, sold for 12 million, and Scott Hogan bought for 0.9 million, sold for 9.5 million. After winning the Championship playoff final last season, Brentford Football Club has completed their ascent to the Premier League, which is now worth 170 million plus, which certainly helps their financial situation. In the present day, Brentford signed striker Ivan Tovey from Peterborough for just over 5 million, and now he's estimated to have a value of 30 million plus. Which begs the question, does the future of football belong to those who spend the most or who spend the wisest? Does it mean that clubs that cannot afford high-ticket players can outwit their rich opponents with a Moneyball-like system? Benham has approached running a football club like a businessman obsessed with data science instead of the traditional route. So if the main function is to turn a profit, then wouldn't every club want to be run like Brentford? Well, winning means money in the bank if you can accumulate enough wins for a title finish or high position in the league. The problem with the Moneyball approach is that when you reduce players down to statistical data, it becomes more of a predictable science than art. And I mean, it's called a beautiful game for a reason, isn't it? Or is there space for football where science and beauty can live in harmony together? One of the reasons Moneyball works so well in baseball is, in comparison to football, it's fairly straightforward in terms of scoring mechanics and variability. The batter either hits the ball out of bounds for a home run or hits it far enough in order to get to base. However, in football, there are a massive number of variables that go into scoring a goal and ultimately winning the game, ranging from tap-ins, own goals, bad ref decisions, deflections, all the way back to the hand of God. Reducing players to a subset of data points doesn't seem the wisest thing to do within a game of so much randomness and chaos. But if Brentford are getting results, it validates their analytical approach. Brentford aren't the only team using this Moneyball method to shape their transfer policy either. Other Premier League clubs such as Brighton, Aston Villa and Liverpool are too. In fact, Liverpool based their signings on Firmino and Salah on their XG data, which has turned out to pay monumental dividends on the initial investment. Salah especially had not been too much of a standout at Chelsea or Roma in terms of getting on the score sheet, but basing the signings off of XG proves that if enough chances are created, then probability of scoring only increases, and with a player like Salah, as proven, give him the ball enough times and he will score, especially under Klopp. This brings up another point about the way data is collected and assessed. The backroom staff and managers can get a better assessment of how a player is actually playing and contributing to the team as they're assessed over a longer period of time. By giving players more time to gather data on their performance, they're given the opportunity to outperform a slump in form. For example, if a team has a tough 3 or 4 games, a striker may not be scoring goals, but the opportunities to score may still present themselves, and because of the chances created, their XG value will show their actual potential to contribute to scoring. Brentford may not have been the creators of this system, but they're definitely one of the early adopters of it in the English game. The fact that they're a smaller team that has the luxury of doing something drastically different from the big teams in the league is definitely a benefit. This system not only benefits the club from a business standpoint, as turning profit is hard, but the fans get to experience more success because their team is theoretically built around a team's strength and not its individual talent. And as long as Brentford are turning a profit and keeping their place in the Premier League, the Moneyball method will forever be vindicated as a viable way of running a football club, not only from a business perspective, but from a successful one too. There's this potential snowball effect too. The more profit they can turn means there are more funds available to buy better players that fit within their system, which will bring them more success. And then they're able to sell them players for more money than they initially bought them, and so on. The cycle, in theory, is never ending. This could be the model that smaller to medium-sized clubs could copy to turn a profit, but not every club has an owner who is a statistical phenomenon who is a childhood supporter of their club. Maybe Matthew Benham and Brentford are outliers, who knows? All Matthew Benham knows is the coffers at Brentford Football Club are full and they're making the system work and quietly disrupting the game in the meantime. Let me know what you think of this video, guys. Would you like your club to be run more like a business and less like a football club?